Hi, and welcome to another episode of Sea Change Cinema. My name's Abby C, and it is amazing to dive into your inbox once again as together we navigate the stormy seas of running our own business, being more visible online, getting more clients, and selling more stuff, because that is what it's all about, really, isn't it? So, how has your week been? We've had some great news this week, whether you live south of the border or north of the border. Schools are going back. Yes! Not all children are going back to school, obviously. My youngest will be going back in the middle of March, and my oldest will be going back after the Easter holidays. But whilst it's not the ideal set of circumstances, what is brilliant is that it's all come at about the same time as the little green shoots have started to pop up in the earth, and the days seem to be brighter and slightly warmer. And I mean, I've even had a window open the last couple of days. That is a miracle. So it feels like things are starting to slowly tiptoe out of the dark and into something altogether lighter. Maybe not normal, but lighter. So what can we do in our businesses this week to tap into that feeling of lightness? And so I've been doing a little mini series of looking at how to turn your scenic route to sales into something lovely with your clients, some lovely engagement with your customers online. And I don't want to follow in on that just yet, because we're at the end of a month, and as I said, we're at the beginning of what feels a tiny little bit like spring is coming. So I'm going to shelve the little series. Don't worry, I'll come back to it next week. And today I'm going to talk you through your review of February. Okay, we're going to do it. I'm not going to do it with you, but I'm going to talk you through it, and then inside this week's newsletter, you will find the links for all of the information that you need so that you can do this activity yourself. Now, I am a sporadic, organised person. I'll start off really detailed and really determined, and it'll fizzle out. But I know that about myself, and so I just keep trying until one day I think something's going to stick. I'm sure that's not the right approach, but it's how I do it. Something that I started way before any of the lockdowns, any of the pandemic. I did monthly reviews for my work so that I could see my income, so that I could work out where I could grow and all that kind of thing. It totally fell by the wayside during 2020 because, frankly, it was a step too far, and I'm pretty sure we all now know when something is a step too far, and I hope that we all give ourselves the grace and the permission to just not do the thing that is the step too far. So I kind of feel energetically like this is something that I want to pick up again. And at the end of January, now I've made no bones about it, and I'm not trying to say that I'm the only one, but January was a horrendous month for me mentally. I took too much work on. It was dark, it was cold, it was really, just a heavy month. And I have spoken to so many other people that felt that way. But I had been so busy that I couldn't let myself just believe that January was this big, ugly, heavy month where no good things came out of it. So I sort of faced the beast and did this exercise and looked back through the month of January and actually worked out that, really, compared to my idea of what January was like, it was like night and day. I thought January was terrible. I achieved nothing. My productivity was on the floor. I didn't connect with anyone online. I didn't really do any work of any note. I just, somehow managed to scrape it together. But the reality of the month was completely different. If you looked at the number stories, and if you looked at just the actual the headlines of all the different things that I'd done and attempted and achieved, they were two completely different stories. And so I am now a complete convert on doing this exercise, even if you've not had an amazing month, even if you know that there's some heavy stuff in there that you don't really want to look at again. I even made a cheesy kind of vision board style social media post, which I'm going to include in this week's newsletter as well, but you can see it on my Instagram page, because I just thought, other people need to do this, because I am the only person in charge of how well my business does. I am the only person in charge of how my actual mindset is. That doesn't sound right. Of where my mindset is. I'm the only person in charge of that. And if I listen to myself without doing any of the research, then I'll be telling myself a story that is not actually true about my business. That might be really common sense to some people, but for me it was like absolute crazy. So the first thing that I always do is look at my numbers. And that's not just my numbers in terms of how much revenue I've invoiced or how much money has come into my bank account. And it's definitely not how much money has gone out of my bank account. It's a whole bunch of numbers, that they're metrics that show you how you're progressing. And if you're not progressing in those areas, where to make changes if they're important to you. So again, this is all included in the newsletter. But I'm talking about creating a spreadsheet where you can start to look at your numbers. So for example, how many people did you introduce to your newsletter mailing list this month? And how many new followers on Instagram? And how many new followers on Facebook? It's about deciding which areas you're focusing your attention on and then seeing where the growth is or the plateau is. And then giving a kind of a measurement as to how happy you are with the engagement that you've had on these platforms, high, medium, low. Now, again, depending on your business, you can also look at things like how many sales calls you'd booked in for this month, how many clients you'd gained this month, and obviously how much revenue you'd brought in. Now, there's two different ways to look at your revenue. You can base your revenue on how much you've invoiced in that month, or you can base your revenue on how much money has actually come in. Last month I used the invoice side of things because it was a really high number. This month I'll use the income because it's basically all of the invoices that I invoiced in January are now being paid. So those numbers are really useful for you. I mean, I can see that, so January and February, I brought 10 new people into my newsletter. Now, I hadn't set any goals for my newsletter growth. I hadn't set any plans. I didn't really have any kind of a strategy in place. So actually getting 10 new people in a month when I've not really done very much is actually, I'm really pleased with that. Equally, I can see that I got 20 new followers on Instagram. You can see that I am not focusing my attention on those things. But what I can also see is that month on month, my income is growing. So I'm obviously doing something right. So now what I can do is go back and look at those numbers and work out exactly what it is that I'm doing that's making those increases, okay? So that's all the number stories. Now, I've got a lovely subscriber on my mailing list, Hina, who is one of my lovely clients, and she is the person that showed me that the number story is so important because it's not just numbers, it's what is behind all of that. So I really love looking in at these numbers now. They used to terrify me, but now I'm like, okay, that's a number. Why is that number there, and what can I do to nudge it up or down, depending on what my priorities are? So the next thing we're going to do is actually look at the month in a more of a storytelling capacity. And one of the main questions that I like to look back on are, what are the biggest wins from this month? Now, you can do this in your business, you can do this in one area of your business, you can do this in your life in general. When I did this at the end of January, I knew that I was going to be asking myself these questions, so I started throughout the month just keeping a little note of things that I can add into this section. So for example, I know that this month I did my first ever live group coaching, co-hosted with Judy Murray, and about emotional hungers. I was really nervous about that, but it went really well. That's a big win for me. Another question is biggest lessons learned and the insights gained from that. Now, I know that actually I could have charged for that session, but I didn't because I go round the scenic route for my selling. So I learned a lot from that webinar, and how to promote it and how to set up a funnel and all the rest around it. So I've learned loads from just that one thing alone, but obviously there's lots more things on that list. And then there's a sort of satisfaction scale about the different areas of your life, 1 to 10. So how satisfied are you with your health and fitness in February, with your business and career in February, with your family and friends, and with your romance, recreation, spirituality, finance and personal development. Now they're all areas that, some things might be more important to you than others, but in a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you with those things? And if you discover that you're really low on your satisfaction with family and friends, obviously we're restricted, but there are ways that you can nudge that number up for the month of March. And that's when you can start to set yourself little goals to try and work towards for the next month. And it's kind of looking at that in more detail, like which life areas were lacking and why, and is that important to you, and do you want to develop that further, and if you do, what can you do to nudge it up? Another question that I always include in my review is what tasks were not accomplished this month. Now, fortunately for me, I write loads of to-do lists in many different books and I don't always achieve them. So it's really good to look over that list and work out what wasn't achieved. And then there's a question of why did I not achieve that? Was it just not that important? And once you start to look at the things that you had hoped to achieve and that you didn't, you can actually start to work out and see themes of things that are important to you and things that you will put your time and energy into and things that you won't. And again, there's another scale, 1 to 10, of how do you feel overall about the month of February, or last month if you're watching this at a different time. And how will I improve this score next month? Now, I've not done my February review, but if I was to focus this on January, I would say that actually I was up at an 8 in terms of my achievements and my output, but there's a massive imbalance about how I actually felt about the work that I was doing. So I really need to improve mindset, don't I? And reality. I think I've got too much reality going on, if I'm honest. And then after that, after you've done a bit of February digging, the next thing to do is start thinking about March. What do you want to achieve in March? 3 things that you would like to achieve in March and why they're important to you. And that kind of balances out really well with what tasks were not accomplished this month and why that was. You will be able to start, those 2 sections of the review will be able to start influencing each other. So that is my review sheet, and I would really love it if you would do the exercise. And if you are doing the exercise, please let me know. I have thought about maybe running a session where we do this together, because sometimes it's really nice, if you think, actually I don't know what my biggest lessons were this month, then I can ask you some leading questions about that. So if that's something that would be of interest to you, please do let me know in the comments or send me an email, and I'll get that set up, because I think you know by now that as much as I am so proud of running my own business and doing this by myself, I don't actually like doing it alone. There's a difference between, self-determination and isolation. So I love doing tasks with other people, and if you are someone who likes doing tasks with other people too, then let me know and we can set up one of these sessions. So have a great time doing this exercise. As I film this, it's the 26th of February. You've got 2 more days left to review the year. I'm going to do it right after I finish this video, and I really hope that you dig deep and that you start to look at the areas that probably you wouldn't have caught the achievements and the positivity and the acknowledgement of how hard you're working and how well you're doing if you didn't do this exercise. Now, I've got one final thing for you. If you do it and you feel like sharing your February wins on social media, please tag me in them, because I love seeing how other people do things. I love seeing people's wins. I love supporting people. I love supporting you. So if you do it, please let me know, tag me in your posts. And on that note, I'm going to leave you to get stuck into all the nooks and crannies of your February. All of the guides that you need to support you with this exercise are in this week's newsletter. And I'll see you next week for another episode of Sea Change Cinema. Have a great weekend. Bye bye.